There are moments in history when obedience is easy and courage is costly. When a man must choose between the silence of fear and the sound of his own conscience. It was 1918, the last months of the Great War. The French countryside lay shattered beneath endless artillery fire, its fields turned to mud, its skies to smoke. In a ravaged outpost along the Marne River, a young recruit named Samuel Graves stood among veterans twice his age. Samuel was quiet, disciplined, and unshaken under fire, the kind of soldier who carried duty like a prayer. Yet his commanding officer, Captain Horace Venn, was a man of another kind. Decorated, proud, and feared more than respected, Venn believed victory came from domination, not discipline. To him, compassion was weakness, and obedience was absolute. That dawn, as the mist rolled over the trenches, scouts reported movement on the opposite ridge, unarmed figures waving white cloths, prisoners, or perhaps villagers fleeing the chaos. But Venn saw only an opportunity to make an example. "Fire on that ridge," he ordered coldly. "No witnesses, no risks." Samuel hesitated. His rifle trembled in his grip. Through his scope, he saw what his captain refused to see, a mother clutching her child. "Sir, they're civilians," he said softly. Then turned to him, eyes sharp as bayonets. "You heard me, Private. Fire!" And in that frozen instant, one order would change everything. The battlefield seemed to hold its breath. The wind cut through the smoke, carrying only silence. Samuel didn't move. His fingers stayed off the trigger. Then's fury ignited. He stormed toward the young soldier, mud splashing beneath his boots. "Do it, Graves! That's an order!"
When Samuel still refused, Then reached for his rifle, intent on forcing compliance. But in one swift motion, Samuel twisted the weapon aside. The steel rang with a sharp crack as the rifle's barrel struck the trench wall, echoing like thunder through the mist. The captain stumbled, his hat tumbling into the mud. Around them every soldier froze, rifles half lowered, eyes wide. Smoke curled between them as if dividing two worlds, obedience and conscience. Then Samuel spoke, his voice steady but low. "With respect, sir, that's not war. That's murder." The trench fell utterly silent. Even the guns on the horizon seemed to stop.
Captain Venn's face turned pale beneath the grime. He straightened his coat, eyes darting between his men, all of whom stood motionless, waiting. "You've disobeyed a direct command," he barked, but the usual fear in his voice was gone. It was thinner now, uncertain. Samuel didn't flinch. "Then I'll answer for it. But those people will live." The captain's jaw tightened. Around him the soldiers whispered. Some lowered their weapons completely, looking toward the ridge where the civilians were still waving frantically. The moral line had been drawn, and Venn found himself on the wrong side of it. A lieutenant, older, quiet, stepped forward. "Sir," he said slowly, "he's right. We can't justify that order." For the first time, the great Captain Venn had no words. He turned away, muttering something about cowardice, but the men no longer listened. They turned instead to the recruit who had defied death, and in doing so, preserved their humanity. Later that night, in a candlelit command tent, Samuel stood before a tribunal. Mud still clung to his boots. He expected punishment, maybe worse. The colonel in charge leaned forward and asked only one question. "Why didn't you obey?" Samuel's reply was quiet, but it carried through the tent like a shot. Because orders end where innocence begins. The colonel said nothing. He simply dismissed the inquiry, closing the file with a soft thud. Word spread faster than gunfire. In the trenches, men spoke of a soldier who refused to shoot, a man who remembered what honor meant when everyone else had forgotten. And though the war raged on, something unseen shifted that day. A silent victory, won without a single bullet fired.
Years later, long after the war's echoes faded into history books, the story of the recruit who refused became legend. It passed from campfire to classroom, from whispers in barracks to lectures in officer academies. Captain Venn's career ended quietly. His medals gathered dust, his name forgotten by those who once feared him. But Samuel Graves, though never promoted, never decorated, lived on in memory, the embodiment of a truth older than any war. A historian once found him decades later, sitting in a small countryside field where the earth had healed over the scars of trenches. His hair had gone gray, but his eyes still carried the weight of that moment. When asked if he regretted defying his captain, he smiled faintly. "Regret?" he said. "No, because I've learned something. The battlefield doesn't decide who wins. Conscience does. And sometimes, silence in the face of wrong is the loudest surrender of all." Those words would later be engraved on a stone memorial near the Marne, not for a general, but for a private who proved that courage is not blind obedience. It's seeing clearly when everyone else refuses to look. In the end, one order changed everything, not just the fate of one man, but the soul of an army.